Thank you so much for coming and attending the Board of Trustees Finance Committee virtual meeting on Thursday, September 24th here at 3 o'clock, or we're a little late starting, 3:04. We thank you for your patience and we appreciate your attendance and your service to the children of the Sumter School District. So at this time I'll call the meeting to order and we'll move on to approval of the agenda.
Do you want to announce who's in person and who's virtual?
Oh, my goodness. Okay. In person, we have Bobby Anderson, myself, Johnny Hilton, Dr. Penelope Martin Knox, Clyde Chan, Sam Myers, and Amy Hanson, and R.P. Jones. And virtual is Jennifer Miller, Shelley Galloway, Sean Reagan, Brenda Hafner, Veron Davis, Cheryl Ray, and John Cody. Who's Phoebe? She's not talking to me. Okay. Is that good enough?
Yes.
Is that good?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll move on to approval of the agenda. If there are no objections, we can accept the agenda as presented. Any objections to the agenda as presented? Hearing none, then we'll move forward to 1.3, approval of the minutes. Everybody will receive their minutes in advance. I'll be happy to entertain a motion to approve the minutes when you're ready.
I so move to approve the minute.
Is there a second to approve the minutes?
Second.
All in favor? If you say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
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 Minutes are approved. Okay, then moving on to 2.1, general fund statement of revenues and expenditures. That would be Ms. Miller.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hilton, Dr. Martin Knox, and committee members. We have several items to discuss today, and we're going to start first with the general fund statement of revenue as of June 30th, 2020. As you can see from the third column, our fiscal year 20 projected revenue is a total of $130,480,447. The revenue changed from the prior presentation by $506,000. The majority of that change was in revenue code 1210, which is our taxes. It changed by approximately $458,000, while revenue code 1280, which is our fee in lieu of taxes, decreased by approximately $52,000. For a net change of $406,000 in our local tax dollars. Additionally, revenue code 3840, which is your manufacturing reimbursement, that increased by approximately $108,000. Please note that I still do need to make the year-end adjustment for the tax receivables, so this number will change again next month. Are there any questions?
The tax receivables would be line 1-210 to ad valorem tax?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that comes from local property taxes for the most part.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, John.
All right.
Thank you.
Moving on to the expenditures. The expenditures decreased by approximately $609,000 from last month. And again, as we continue to close out the balance sheet accounts, these will be adjusted. Adjustments had an impact on expenditure code 140, terminal leave, which decreased by approximately $49,000. Code 230, which is Social Security, that decreased by approximately $580,000. Additionally, we had an additional transaction posted to code 720, payments to other governmental units, the amount of $19,000 that occurred, is that prior to June 30th, but were not billed until August. That brings our total projected expenditures to $24,989,351. And based on the adjustments that we just discussed, the change in fund balance is projected to be approximately $8.3 million as of June 30th, 2020. Are there any questions?
So the total fund, the projected fund balance that we're looking at is, at the end of the year, is gonna be 22.7?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Any other questions or discussion?
I'd like to make a statement that this is an excellent report, where we're getting to, where we've got a projected fund balance of 22 million at the end of the year. It's kind of why I'm getting to where we are, and it's a good position to be in.
Any other questions or discussion? Ms. Miller?
All right, the one thing I did want to remind everyone, the projected change in fund balance is good news. I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that legislators are projecting a mid-year cut that could range between 3% and 7%, which equates to approximately 2.9 million to 6.7 million for the school district.
Yes,
Are there any questions after that?
This is a cut from the state, you said?
Yes, that is correct. All right, if we're ready, we can move on to the August 31st figures. There hasn't been much of a change from the projection from last month. We reported the August transactions. The only adjustment I've made at this time is for some contributions and donations. Those are hard to project what a budget is for that, so I've increased the projection right now based on the known transactions that occurred in August. And again, we are operating under the prior year's budget, so we have just rolled forward the prior year budget. Are there any questions on the revenue?
Any questions or discussion regarding August 31, 2020 revenue? Ms. Miller?
Okay, and then just moving on to the expenditures. Again, I've recorded the August transactions and I have not changed any of the projections. So based on this, we are changing the balance of a negative $184,000. And we will continue to monitor the budget and update according to legislation as we have information from them. Are there any questions?
Yeah, well, I just want to comment. So your projection for the end of this year is that we're gonna, not take out 184,000 out of the fund balance. In other words, we're running at a 184,000 deficit for this year.
Correct. Right now, that's the projection, but it's taking last year's budget,
Right.
which projected a loss of 200,000 and adjusting it for the increase in revenue projections right now.
Right.
But again, we are anticipating a 3 to 7% mid-year budget cut. And so we will adjust the revenue by reducing that as we move forward.
And none of these figures reflect that projected cut because it hadn't happened yet.
That's correct.
Any other questions or discussion?
Okay, now we can move on to capital projects updates. You have the August 31st information in front of you for funds 519 through 524. Are there any questions related to the capital project? And you should also have the detail by location as well.
So I have a sort of a general question. We have these projects that we.
If they speak up some, it's hard to hear.
I'm sorry. I have that problem when I'm at home too. I can't hear what y'all saying in the room. So we have this these projects that we've indicated we want to spend this bond money, this borrowed money on. But we do have the ability and the authority to change these projects, do we not?
Yes.
Yeah, so if we decided that there was something more pressing related to the upcoming school year, given the circumstances we're dealing with COVID and moving back to a hybrid, then we have the authority and the ability to reallocate these capital projects funds. Is that correct,
Yes.
Dr. Martinell?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion regarding capital projects? Ms. Miller?
All right, next we're going to move on to our facility and finance discussion, and I will start sharing my screen to have a presentation for you. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Great. We're going to talk about building and classroom sanitation and air quality updates. It will be presented by Mr. Samuel Myers, Mr. Clyde Chan, and by myself, Ms. Jennifer Miller. And I will turn it over to you, Mr. Myers, to begin the presentation.
Okay, thank you and good afternoon. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. As we moved into this school year, we've had opportunities to work diligently in making sure that our schools were prepared, clean, and given the attention that's due. As we move forward, one of our first opportunities after the shutdown back in March was to work with the LEAP program. That was the early part of August. And at the conclusion of that, we had to take a look at the different kinds of things that we did. And what you're seeing now is a checklist of items that our building services staff have been using. We resubmitted that and made sure everyone was connected with it. As you continue to move with the next slide, you'll see there is one for cleaning classrooms, office space, and one for cleaning the restrooms. And there is sections on there, as we'll be talking about very shortly, about air filtration and filters, and there's a section on there for building service staff members and administrators and everyone else to inspect and then change those filters. They inspect them weekly and they will change them monthly. As we continue to move, we wanted to make sure that everyone had those, and just this week we reinforced opportunities for our building services staff to check all of their filters once again to make sure that they were being removed for the ones that need to be removed or changed in that regards. And we've done what we needed to do in regards to that, and we're still working at getting better at that, and there are some other things we need to do as well. As we continue to move, moving into, that leads us into the air quality update. and they're just some basic definitions. When we start talking about filters, we're talking about a MERV rating, which is the minimum efficiency reporting of values of the types of filters that we will use. We also talk about HEPA, which is a high efficiency particulate air. As we move forward to the next slide. We're talking about the type of filters we have. When we talk about the higher MERV rating filters, we're talking about some pros, which could be it collects more particles. Some of the cons could be that it restricts the airflow and damage to the compressor. As we move to the next slide, you will see a description of 3 different slides of 3 different filters, MERV 8, and you'll see some of the different things that go along with those filters. You'll see MERV 11 and MERV 13. As we move to the next slide, we'll talk about air purification. Some of those are called air scrubbers, air purifiers, and some of the pros in reference to that instrument itself is that there's no installation. It controls odors. It has a HEPA filter. Some of the cons being does not kill germs. As we leave that particular unit, we move into the bipolar ionization I-wave R, and Mr. Chan is going to share information about that.
The bipolar ionization operates on the concept of emitting 2 ionizing impulse into the air. It's an electrophysic concept which provides 2 distinct ions in the air which attacks particles, viruses, allergens, and even odors. It is a device that has been adopted by several organizations and schools within South Carolina and the surrounding area. Based on the geographs of our region, we are a very high humid area, so it maximizes on the destruction of any spores, mold, or fungus. So the only con to this or drawback, it requires a installation, and it's a simple installation for our technicians or the person installing that.
All right, here we're gonna play a little video for everyone on how these bipolar ionization are called. And please note that it's gonna start with an ad and then it'll go into the video.
Okay, folks, what I want to talk about today is this I-wave R. I personally am selling these. Like I told you in my past videos, I've had several customers that have really absolutely scared great reviews of this thing. And I recommend if you have any kind of mold, mildew, allergy in the house, try these out, okay? Now, I want to talk about today what I did is I actually took this unit bit. This is called a unit bit. This particular bit goes from a quarter all the way up to 1.1/8 inch. And I just drilled my hole out right here, okay? And the reason I did that, I didn't want you to stand here and change that bit. I didn't want you to stand here and watch me drill a hole. One thing I did want to show you, this thing is multitask. It can go like this. And I want you to look at this real close. It's got a magnet. It's got a magnet here. So this thing the air always has to blow across the football goals, I call it. Pretend like this is a football going across it. The air always has to cross over. So they made this thing where it can go sideways, this way, this way, this way, this way. And it's got all these little self-tapping screws that they've even put in here for you. Okay. So what I've done here is this particular unit. If you look through this hole right here, I have drilled me a 3-inch hole. That's what this is right here, 3-inch hole. Okay? And what we're going to do, we're going to actually mount this thing. And they even provided I-wave, which is made by New Calgon. They have provided the self-tapping screws. So I'm going to hold that up here. I'm just going to put a couple self-tapping screws in real fast. So they even got insulators on them. and they're brass, well, they'll never rust. Just set that right in. Notice how it slowed down? About to slow down, that's when it actually cuts the metal, guys. Don't over torque it, you'll crack little plastic pieces on it. And we'll go over here, you're going to tap it on this side. Okay, all right, now that's firmly mounted. So now we have all these wires. I want to show you something once again with all the wiring. It's right here. The wiring can be universal voltage, 24 volt to 260, and at 260 it burns less than 10 volt amps. That is so minute. A light bulb will burn 10 times more electricity. This thing can run for a year. It probably costs you $1. Okay. So I always hook mine up on the line side of the 260. That way, this self-cleaning wheel will rotate constantly. And every 3 days, it comes in and does its own cleaning. I want you to look at the box. Here's the box this comes in. And this is what you're buying. New Calgon, Highway Bar, residential air cleaner. This thing does a fabulous job. And here's the number if you want to look it up on their website. Okay? So all I did here, now I drilled a hole. I put a 1/2-inch Romex connector here. This particular cartridge line voltage, this is what we hook up to the high side, and it actually has an inline fuse. So if something happens, you can turn it on and off, okay? This here's the ground, and these right here are for an unscathed switch. Let's say this owner wants a light to verify it's working in the hallway or next to the thermostat. You can actually hook this up so they can see a light. You'll buy this from your local HVAC supplier. So I'm just going to pretend that we have power in here, so I'm going to put it through the wire through the hole, I'm sorry. Okay, now I'm going to kind of square mine off just a little bit and dress it up just a little bit here, and I'll probably end up putting a little piece of tape here, and I'll make sure this done. Also, this thing has a green light on the bottom when it's working. You'll see the green light, plus it has a override switch for the self-cleaner, okay? So let's pretend I have high voltage in here. All I'm going to do here, I'm just going to wire net these off individually, okay? I'm going to hook this wire up to ground. I'm just going to pretend I have a ground wire here. And then this here is going to my line voltage, okay? And that's all there is to it, folks. They are so simple to operate. Some of the benefits that last up to 10 years. They have 3-year warranty on them. You never have to replace the bulb. It creates no ozone. It kills all kinds of bacteria and things. Here, take a shot of this. Here's just some of the things this thing actually does. I mean, it removes odors or cooking odors, airborne mold spores, reduces smoke allergens. Look at this. E. coli, strep, MRSA. MRSA's from the hospital. Tuberculosis. Cell germs are killed.
All right, so that was the short video, and I will turn it back over to Mr. Meyer and Mr. Chan for the next slide.
What you're seeing now is basically a recap of the information we've shared with you in reference to the MERV rating filters. Once again, we indicate that it collects particles, restricted airflow being some of the cons, and damage to the compressor. With air purification, there's no installation, controls the odor, and it has a HEPA filter. Some of the cons being it does not kill any germs. Bipolar ionization, pros being kills mold, bacteria, and viruses, reduces allergens, reduces odors, and it's self-cleaning. Con could be that it has installation that's required. We're going to move forward into the next
All right, I'll go ahead and talk about this slide. You're certainly not putting a cost on the safety of our students and our staff, but we did want to present these here to you. The first option is the bipolar ionization, and the cost of that is $350 each. We're estimating a quantity of 1,200, and with taxes, that would be $453,600. Then for the second option, for the air purification, again, a quantity of 1,200, those $120 each, and that taxes equates to $414,720. And then we just wanted to give you a comparison on filters. We just picked a size, like 30 by 1. We have the different MERV ratings there to show you. If we start with a rating of 8, they're $5 a piece. A rating of 11 would be approximately $13 a piece. And then the rating of a MERV 13, they're approximately $22 each. And then as we move here to the funding, just wanted to let everybody know that equipment and installation with a within 1 year can be purchased with our bond, 8% bond money. However, the filters that have to be replaced monthly must be purchased with operating revenue from the general fund. And that concludes our presentation, and at this time we'll take any questions.
I have some, if I may. Mr. Myers, regarding the portable air purifiers, one of the con you listed, it does not kill germs. Well, I agree with that. Neither do the MERV 13 filters. So what is the point then of the MERV 13? Why is it advantageous to an 8?
The MERV 13 itself is one that is more refined, and it works on filtering better than the 8.
Right.
And in regards to that, with the MERV 13, it puts a strain on the compressor depending
I
on the unit
understand
itself.
the shortcoming. The point I'm trying to make is this, is that the HEPA filter, which is cleans the air better than a MERV 13. What it does, just like the MERV 13, is it restricts, it cleans the air, and it holds the virus in the filter, where the virus then dies. The filter itself doesn't kill the virus. The filter traps the virus, and then the virus dies, just like an animal in a trap will eventually die. The virus in the trap of the filter will eventually die. We know that the CDC tells us that COVID viruses might last on a surface for a few hours. And there's always controversy about how long it lasts and doesn't last. But the point of the portable air filters with the HEPA filters, which is superior to a MERV 13 or 14, is that it traps the virus in the filter where the virus then dies. I just want to make sure we're understanding the science here, the process. It does not kill the virus. The virus dies on its own, just like the virus dies on its own in a MERV 13 filter. So, I wanted to clarify that. Then another question I wanted to ask is about these ionizations. It's come to my attention that I found an article here from the EPA that indicated that ionizers, which is what we're talking about here, actually, this guy here, he did a great job of pitching that thing. He's a great salesman. But there are some negatives of the ionizers, and I'm not sure y'all are familiar with this, that ionizers do produce ozone as a byproduct of the ionization process. So the question is, and these ionizers are being refined as time goes along, just like a lot of things are. My question is, this particular ionizer, what information do we have on the amount of ozone that this ionizer produces? Because they all produce ozone, is what my research indicates to me. Now, I don't know what your research has indicated to you, But I would suggest that we do some further research regarding the byproducts of an ionization adapter to go into our AC units. And this may be the way to go. But I think we need to do further research on the byproducts of ionization. And maybe you have some additional information at this time you wanted to share.
Well, there's research that's coming out all the time about a variety of things that may affect anything we choose to use.
That's correct.
With the bipolar ionization, just doing some research, there is something that indicates about affecting the ozone. We're looking at not necessarily knowing what effect or what amount it is, and the only thing we have to check on is what amount is emitted into the air. That requires just a little more research, but with some of the other things that we're using, there could be some negative effect regardless as to what we're using. But I think that in itself, there is research out there that indicates that. And I think the amount of it is something we need to take a look at. But I'm just responding to, doing more research and have done some. And I think we just need to see what is the allowable effect of it.
So may I add to that? And that's a great question, Dr. Hilton. One of the things that we've been doing is similar to what you've done. We've done research. But I also like to do research by contacting other schools and other school districts. And so I shared this the other evening at the facilities meeting. I've spoken with superintendents, I've spoken with chiefs of facilities in various school districts. And if you talk to them all, they all do something different. One of the biggest impacts that they mentioned first in terms of determining which direction they would go is the funding and the ability to maintain if they go in a different direction. I spoke to one district, for example, they went from the MERV 8, which MERV 8 seems to be standard with every school district that I spoke to. So I want to make sure that when we started talking about MERV 8 and it being the lowest number in terms of the MERV rating, that we were not putting our staff in harm's way. That seems to be the standard filter that's utilized. I spoke with one school district and they use the MERV 13s, but only because they have new systems. Their HVAC systems are new and were built for the MERV 13. I had this perception that MERV 13 destroyed the HVAC units. I spoke with an individual the other day who was very knowledgeable, and he indicated it doesn't necessarily destroy the unit, but it makes it difficult for the unit to function. And so he asked the question of me, are you willing to sacrifice destroying your materials for a filter? So what he said is that they were going to use the MERV 13 just for a year. And I guess they were anticipating this whole virus thing having vaccines and more study around it about its effects and its impacts and how is it transmitted. And so they were only planning to use the MERV 13 for a year and then reverting back to the 8. We also spoke with another district that's shifting from the 8 to the 9. It was all new learning for me, and I think learning is something that we all do each and every day because I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone with even having the conversation about anything MERV oriented. I thought it was 8, 11, and 13. I found out there was a 9 the other day. So the district is just stepping up just one other level to make sure that they were able to get the filters changed. I spoke with the same person who was responsible in this particular district, and he said, I hope you have the staff because changing these filters, we have 24 maintenance crew members and it's going to take us 9 months to go through and clean and change the filters. So you need to start planning now because they just began the process. So I think that as we were doing the work, I did not hear the ionization and I didn't hear the purifiers. It was just about the filters in the HVAC units. So I do not hesitate. I mean, I've spent time on the phone just trying to make sure that I'm safeguarding our children, that I'm safeguarding us, even sitting here in this building. And I do believe that although COVID has been detrimental to our nation, it has opened our eyes to so many things to say, you need to make some adjustments in your practice because you've gotten too comfortable. So let's wake up. And I think this has been a wake-up call for us, not just about changing the filter, but recognizing the coils need to be vacuumed, and we need to probably go back and check our ductwork and making sure we train individuals on how to. But this has been an eye-opening process for us, just making sure we are safeguarding every individual against this horrific virus that's out there that's taking lives and damaging people's physical for the rest of their lives in most cases. But in terms of the research, you will find research that's in support of, and then you'll find some research that's not in support of. It's about which one is operable, and so that's why I kind of base my research on what people are doing and the impact that it has had. Because I can do the research and can find something that supports either way. I really like to see people who are doing it at that moment and have been doing it and doing it well. So did I find one solution? I didn't. The only common thread was the adjustment in the filters. And I do know that that's a way that we need to go, and the manner in which we clean our filters and our ducts and our vent units. It has to be done. But thank you for that question. Somebody's squeaking. I don't know if that was a squeak to say stop talking or.
I have a question. In, talking about it damaging the 13, damaging the heating and air system, I'm assuming that's because it restricts the flow of air.
Correct.
All right, can they not add an additional fan motor in there to pick up that extra?
They are not engineered to design to install additional to within the compartment of that return for, it works on a squirrel cage, a rotating cage that runs that air across the coils, and then the compressor compresses the air, extracts the moisture out of it, and spits it back in. There's no modification as far as room to put an additional fan in there. You have to put an additional
Before you
screw.
got to the unit itself on the return air.
Say it again.
I said, I was thinking if they added a fan, an additional piece in the ductwork before it got to on the return air to the unit, that it should,
That's a pretty complex thing, and it may be possible, but as far as the engineering standpoint, it's very tight in those units to put an additional piece of equipment of that magnitude.
Amy's making a question.
No, sir, that's what's.
One of the things, Dr. Hilton,
Yes, sir.
that was spoken of at the last facilities meeting was the fact that there are several schools in school district in South Carolina that are utilizing this. But they can't give me a defining effect on the installation of this. Georgia County is one in particular. They have gone across their district and blanketed their units with these devices. Gwinnett County School District in Georgia, which is the largest school district in Georgia, they blanketed all of their units with this. I called Pickens County in South Carolina. They're doing absolutely nothing. They're just bringing in more fresh air into the classroom. I spoke with Horry County, and they're using number 13 MERV filters. So they have a company that is hired to replace those filters on a consistent basis. Now, having said that, I introduced a piece, and it seemed like many of the board members were in agreement of it. Since we have not defining data concerning this, why don't we set a stage of our own and establish our own findings about this piece of equipment as far as changing the air quality within the classroom? My suggestion was to get a sample of the air prior to this installation, and then another sample after 72 hours of usage of this, and determine if there's an air difference. Dr. Martin suggested that it should be done at every level of school, like elementary, middle, and high school. And so that would confirm whether or not this thing is what it says it is. This has a UL rating. The Underwriters Laboratory does 800 safety tests before they stamp their initials on it. It's got an underwriter laboratory approval. So, once again, the only way to really check it is to have testing done prior to the entry of it in the classroom and after to see the effects of it. It will determine even the ozone composition within the testing method.
So I understand about Underwriters Laboratory, that certifies the electronics of it. That doesn't certify what it's emitting or what it's removing from the air. It's my understanding of Underwriters Laboratory.
Their safety,
Electrical, they evaluate electrical devices. All right, so but going back to your question of testing the air in the room, what device and what standard are you going to use to test the air?
various companies that do our air quality control testing within our schools. Whenever there are issues concerning, questions concerning mold or fungus or yeast in the classroom, allergens that are there, we send in a company to do an analysis of the air quality in that room to determine if the findings is actually what has been described. We take an air sample, it's sent off to either North Carolina or New Jersey. They do a laboratory analysis of the air, and then they tell us what the composition of the air is.
Well, now this might sound like an asinine question, and I apologize if it does. But we're not going to be able to determine if there were any COVID-19 virus in the air before we run this test. Now,
No, there will be no COVID because COVID is not in the air,
well, we hope not.
or not according to the medical.
So the purpose, in my estimation, the purpose of installing the new air filters, the purpose of installing an ionizer, the purpose of buying a portable air purifier is to reduce the chance that somebody sitting in one of our classrooms is going to be exposed to a COVID-19 virus. Would you agree that that's what all this discussion is about?
That's the majority of it, but it would be fine to improve the air quality.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm all for better air quality, no question. And we've gotten all kinds of calls and emails and texts this week since this discussion was initiated about things going on in the rooms. And you know about this. We don't have to go over this again. There's room for improvement regarding air quality in our classrooms, regardless of whether we're talking about COVID-19 or what we're talking about. We're just talking about the maintenance of our air conditioning system. But again, going back to this device versus we got ABC. We got ionization, we got a portable thing that's going to sit in the middle of the room, we got a MERV 13 filter. So I agree, we need to do more research. And I want to do some more research on the negative output of ionizers, because there's data out there that it's putting off stuff, So I don't have a problem with running a test, but that test is not going to tell us anything about what this device is doing regarding COVID-19. I don't think. It might tell us about dust, mold, spores, all that kind of stuff. So again, that would be a decision up to the administration as to whether we run these tests. But then my question would be, what is our goal of running the test? What is it we're trying to find out, by running the test?
May I add, Dr. Hilton?
Sure.
I think that the utilization of results from an assessment will allow us to see if there's something else also that we can refine. Because with the ducts needing to be cleaned, I think that the assessment would allow us to determine if there's presence of something else that's harmful. One of the articles that I read talked about the impact it has on the lungs and, because of the ionization and I don't want our children or anybody exposed to that. But I will tell you, I said a few moments ago that learning is something that never ceases. When I was speaking with one gentleman who I thought was absolutely marvelous, he made me aware of something called the ASHRAE. And I'll send it to Amy for her to send to the group, but it's the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers. And they do research around infectious diseases and the way it's in the air. I had never heard of it because, again, it's out of my realm of expertise. But I'll make sure I send this to Amy so she can send it to everyone. I began reading it Tuesday. He actually sent it to me Tuesday because I owned it. I don't know what you're talking about, but I will now be an expert after I read this paper. And so you will all be one too. But I'll make sure I get it to you. So
That'd be great.
And I'm, by the way, I'm all for testing, because I wonder, we'll talk about the ionization. I see this little thing that goes right inside, how much air is gonna go by and not get ionized as it goes by? You know, because that's, made for residential apparently.
This is not basically for residential, but for 6 tons or below.
Okay. But anyway, in other words, they've got different levels of it that they.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, the only way to know it is for it to be tested. And, unless there's already information that gives that. But I'm like you about the ionization, about the ozone, particles, we need to know that.
There, Mr. Anderson, there are several types of ionization equipment. There are some, like the UV lighting ionization, it emits ozone, harmful ozone. This has nothing to do with any UV lighting or anything. This is a electromagnetic device that sends ionized impulse in the air, a positive charge and a negative charge. It's just physics as far as this goes.
Okay. Well, then they should have a result on it. They'll have information on the problem. But testing before and after, before you purchase a lot of that stuff, it makes sense to me.
Well, again, I've got this article here from the EPA, United States Environmental Protection Agency, and the title of the article is Indoor Air Quality. What are ionizers and other ozone-generating air cleaners? So there's no question that an ionizer generates ozone. The question we need to determine is how much ozone is it generating?
And is it harmful?
Well, breathing, ozone in a room with people is harmful.
Yeah.
But it's a question of at what level.
Well, you know, Dr. Hilton, in that same article, it stipulates that Food and Drug Administration has dedicated time to say that 0.05 per million units is emitted. Not sure as whether that's harmful or not, and that's where the study has to come in.
Right. That's what I'm saying. We need to do some more research.
And so that's worth checking into, but the article that you just referenced is one that talks about medical devices with that instrument itself, so.
Right. Yeah. Anybody else have any comments or questions? We're doing all the talking in this room. Some of you folks that are in another room, I'm sure have some thoughts.
Right, I have a question about this.
Yes, sir.
And for, I guess this is for clarification. I see that Mr. Myers is in there and Mr. Chen. I guess this question is directed towards you guys. When it comes to the MERV, so this is new to me too, the filter that we're currently using, you said that was a number 8?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, what is the recommendation from the maintenance department? I guess Mr. Chen or Mr. Myers. What is the recommendation from the district side of what we should be using at this particular time?
The number 8 has been one that's been used regularly. The recommendation is going to be after the various conversations we've had to find one that is going to work. I can't say that number 8 is going to be the best thing to work. We found that in many instances that it works in some areas, works on some of the newer units better. But that's why we're taking a look at this now. It could be that the number 9 could be the best one to go with, but that's what we need to study and find out.
if I may.
Yes.
There was a chart, they put up a chart in the first part of the presentation, Sean, that showed an 8 and 11 and a 13. And it gave you the different things that an 8 would trap in the air, and what an 11 would trap in the air, and what a 13 would trap. And a 13 will trap viruses, but an 11 and an 8 won't trap viruses. So the rating is all about how fine a particle will be trapped in the filter. So what they're telling us is that we've been using 8s, that all our units are designed to use 8s, and that if you go up to a 14, it's going to put a strain and possibly damage the compressor or other components in the air conditioning unit. So they're suggesting that maybe we could go up to a 9, which is going to trap more stuff and possibly improve the air quality, but we can't go up to a 13 or a 14, which is going to trap viruses, because our units are older and can't handle it. And Dr. Martin Knox was alluding to a district that has put in new air conditioners, and they can put in the more, the better filters, because their units are designed to handle the bigger filter. And I don't know if that's answering your question or what.
Yeah, it answers it.
Question.
Thank you.
How far away from us, in other words, they said it may damage the compressor. I mean, to what level? Reduce the years on that compressor by a certain amount, and I know you probably don't have that number, but, and then how far away from us having to replace the compressor anyway, or change this unit out? So it sounds like it'd be great to have the virus, the 13 is what it sounds like to me, because of taking the viruses out. And so I don't know, we'd have to know from maintenance where we are as far as these units are concerned. How many new units do we have? How many new compressors do we have? And what does it just change out the compressor makes the difference? Or we got to change the entire unit out?
First of all, I was, Mr. Austin asked a question, and I think when the question was asked, why are we, and we alert to the fact that we can use any filter that we want to.
Right.
But the manufacturer's recommendation is a number 8 MERV filter for the efficiency and operation of the unit. That's why it's a standard across all school districts, because the manufacturers recommend that because of the components that are in the unit. Yes, there are units that are more defining for 13, even HEPA, of course, the term 13 and 14 is also referred to as HEPA filters also. But it's simply that the airflow cools the coils that are going through. And if that is restrained, there's what we call head pressure,
Right.
that is built from the gases that are being compressed.
Sure.
And as a result of that, it overheats components. Fans are having to struggle to pull the air. Compressors the term compressor is simply, that's what it does. It compresses air. And that's or compresses the gases in order to cool the air. And so what occurs there, it goes into deeper labor to do the same job by restricting that airflow.
Okay.
The term, and I use it, it's like a marathon runner running with a rag in its mouth,
Right.
basically.
Yeah, I understand. I wonder if anybody's looked at what, there again, and I guess the testing we're talking about doing and looking into, but asking that group that you were talking about, do they have any information on how much difference it makes on a 13 to an 8? Because it sounds like 13 for an 8 if we possibly can, to cut the viruses out, because golly, not only do we have COVID, but we have flu viruses and other things, you know? And,
One of the things that also was shared with me, I felt like a child in school because it was something new for me. He said, you know, one of the things that they're battling with in their school district is now we have an idea for the classrooms. We're now trying to replace the filters, but now we have to consider the hallways. Because in the hallways is where the large number of children are, and there is no air circulating in that particular space. And then I told Mr. Myers, I was like, we need to talk about the hallway, yes, right? So every day there's something new that we have to improve upon. And so having discussions like this are very meaningful, they're reflective, and they make us better at what we do. And so we're willing to do whatever assessment that's necessary so that it is allowing us to go into a direction where we're able to safeguard our school facilities and our office buildings. Because we're not just talking about schools, we're talking about office facilities as well, because we have adults that we need to take care of. And so looking at ways in which we can do that, but making sure we do that in a way that's most cost effective, not putting the cost in front of the safety, but making sure that what we do, we can sustain what it is that we do.
is that great and cheapest?
Yes, I like to say less expensive, but
I'm a cheap guy, I get it.
Anybody else, have any additional questions or comments? Looks like we, lost Ms. Ray. Did we lose Ms. Ray? Sean, you have anything else?
I have a question.
Ms. Wilson?
Hello?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Is it a possibility to do a combination of the systems? In other words, the portable unit, we could start off with something like that just to see how it works, and then put in parts of the other system to see how it works. And then that would give us more concrete information on what might be in our best interest for the district. I mean, I'm just asking, is it possible?
Well, I mean, I suppose it's possible to install certain units in some classrooms and other units in other classrooms. You could put the ionizer in one school and put the portables in another school or in different classrooms. I don't know. I mean, that's possible. I think just me talking here is I think we need to do some additional research on all of these different options.
I agree.
And then try to figure out which way to go. The good news is we do have funds available with our capital improvement money to purchase the ionizer and/or to purchase a higher grade filter where it's appropriate to use it if the unit can stand the higher grade filter, and/or to purchase the individual air purifiers to go in the classroom. So we do have some options and we do have funds, and all that's good news.
Yeah. Okay.
The difficult part is figuring out which is the best way to go that's going to be the most effective and economical route to take.
I agree.
Dr. Hilton, I just have one comment. I just want to clarify that we cannot use the bond money for the filters themselves. That would have to come out of the general fund budget.
Okay, yes, thank you. We can buy an ionizer and the individual room air purifiers, but not the filters that go in the existing units. Gotcha.
Okay.
And what we need to be protecting our students, the younger folks are not having nearly as much problem with this as the older people are. And the teachers and the office people, as you mentioned, are going to be the ones that we're going to need to be looking at to protect them more than we will, as the concern there, because if we don't have a teacher, we still don't have a classroom.
Any further discussion or questions regarding the the facilities discussion. Hearing none, next on the agenda would be the minority business enterprise utilization plan update.
I just wanted to let the committee know that on Monday, September 28th, I will be presenting that to the board, just giving you the information that will be presented next Monday.
Very good. Next is executive session. We don't have to go into executive session today. If we feel we need to, we can. Or if there are those that feel we need to go into executive session, I'll be happy to entertain a motion. Okay, yes, ma'am.
So I was thinking, Jennifer, I need to look at our paperwork. When we were talking about the energy savings piece, couldn't the HVAC units be a part of that?
Yes, the energy savings program that we are
That's
currently. Yes, ma'am, we could look at our HVAC systems and look at upgrading our systems. It would be a very costly endeavor, but that is something that we get through that program, yes, ma'am.
And it just dawned on me, I'm sorry, it just clicked.
And what is that now?
That's the discussions you had before with the energy savings with training.
Right.
To upgrade our buildings, the lighting, the air. What else was in that contract, Jennifer? Lighting, air?
Lighting, air, it would be seals around windows, anywhere where savings could be obtained. And we did actually reach out to Trent, who is conducting that energy savings audit right now, and talk to them about air quality testing, which of course they do that as well. So that is something we're talking about already, is reaching out to them to see what can be done.
But we have not agreed.
Not here, but the board did.
The board did
Yes, sir.
agree to move forward on that
Yes, sir.
process? Okay.
I can't believe nobody says no to you, who? I gotta think of everything.
Okay, so going back to executive session, I don't hear anybody saying we need to go into executive session today. So we'll move on to any action required. There's no action required, I don't believe. Any recommendations? I would like to recommend that we conduct further research, particularly on this ionization option. As we move forward, and that more information be made available to the board regarding the concerns that have been expressed about the negative impact, the possible negative impact of ionization. Any discussion regarding that?
Is that a consensus?
Well,
I concur on the recommendation.
any discussion on the recommendation?
No.
Sean? Is that okay?
Yes.
No discussions.
Is that okay to make that recommendation that we conduct further research?
That's fine.
Patty?
I second it.
Okay. Well, do we have to vote on it? Okay, well, we've reached consensus on that, so,
I'd like to also recommend that, and that, we don't, I'm not talking about hiring some big company to do a study, but, just kind of a review of where we are with the HVAC systems. In other words, if we're within 2 or 3 years or 5 years of replacing one, it may be that we need to look at that as far as going to 13, and if we got a unit that's not gonna handle it and say, well, we'll put 13 in, and we know it's gonna go out sooner, but, because it's just, it's gonna cause more head pressure and all that sort of thing. But if we got some at least general feel for it as to where we are with that, because, to make a decision with less than a 13, I'm gonna say, and that unit's about the last quarter of its life already, and that's, that's what I'm talking about. And that implies that you're gonna be the one that's gonna have to just take a look at where we, last time we changed them and all that sort of thing out.
The life expectancy of any unit is 20 years.
Yeah,
And we can determine the age of a unit based on the serial numbers.
correct.
It unveils how old, what month, what year it was built. It's ironic to say that we are well past the life expectancy. In other words, we have units, I would say, probably in the close proximity of 60 to 65% that are beyond the 20-year range.
Then it would seem to me that we would need to consider that, well, it's gonna be going out in the next 4 or 5 years anyway, and that would certainly give us the safety net of the 13 filter or whatever, if we had to change the unit out, even though they're expensive, very expensive.
And also the that, and I'm sure that the energy audit by training is gonna unveil a lot of this to determine what aged units we have out there and to determine what their recommendations are. And our superintendent, Dr. Mark Knox, can also chime in on the fact that the possibility of the units that are to be replaced to accommodate those higher rated filters at that particular time.
And that would be done on a school by school basis, right? In other words, the units, we didn't put in all the units at the same time, they were put in at different time in different schools, you would think, right?
Right.
So this audit is gonna show that this school right here has the oldest units, and those would be the ones that we would wanna replace first. Or run this experiment with first, if you wanna call it that.
In an ideal world, each one of them should have a social security number. In other words, a location, an identification. Say, for example, Millwood, where you were familiar with. Millwood number 1 should be at your office or at the office of the principal.
Mm-hmm.
And then comb through so that if there is some means of tracking a unit, how problematic it is, you can go to say, okay, Millwood number 45 is over the gymnasium.
Mm-hmm.
And it's consistently been having problems with compressors, fan circulating motors, or whatever it may be, the component may be.
Could be in the library.
Could be.
And is the federal government not going to be providing funding to the state?
Excuse me. Anyhow, is there any further discussion? If not, then if we can reach consensus on adjournment, I would suggest that we adjourn. Thank y'all so very much for being here today. We appreciate your service to the students of Sumter School District, and stay well and safe and have a great afternoon. Thank you so very much.
Yes, thank you, Amy.
Thank y'all. Thank you,
Good
Cheryl.
afternoon.
You too.